Okay, in this session we can talk about the introduction on the DevSecOps or overview about the DevSecOps. We can discuss in this session. Agenda: the overview of the DevSecOps, CICD pipeline and tools details, security activities and tools details, sample architecture of the DevSecOps, implementation of the DevSecOps, best practices to be followed in the DevSecOps, benefit of the DevSecOps. So these aspects we can discuss in this session. Overview: DevSecOps. What is DevSecOps? Development plus security plus operations, right? It is a process or approaches to incorporate the security activities across the DevOps phases. It is process and approaches to automate the security activities and implement it in the CI/CD pipeline stages. These automations and approaches includes security compliance, security dashboard, security monitoring, right? And how to implement? First, we need to identify the security activities which is to be followed in our product development lifecycle, and what tools we need to use, that details we need to gather, and we need to automate using our CI/CD, and we need to integrate that automations as part of our CI/CD. This is what we need to approach to implement the DevSecOps framework. Where to follow? Any product development lifecycle, including the web application development, API development, mobile application development, embedded development, IoT solutions development, cloud-based solutions. So we can follow these DevSecOps practices and we can incorporate as part of our DevOps pipeline. New product development, also existing product development. So both these scenarios we can implement the DevSecOps activities. Under domain aspects, all the domain wherever we are following the DevOps, we can incorporate the DevSecOps practices and we can achieve the DevSecOps benefit. So that product may belongs to the banking, fintech, medical, healthcare, telecommunication, automotive, ICS, home automation, e-commerce, retail applications, right? So any of the domain we can incorporate these DevSecOps practices. Okay, before going to the DevSecOps framework, we will see overview about the DevOps framework. Suppose if we take traditional DevOps framework, they have different stages, right? One is plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor. Each stage, what activities we are following and which tools we will use. So these details also mentioned here. Example, if we take the plan stage, there we will do the activities like product requirements, project plan, high-level design, low-level design documents. These activities majorly we will follow. And what tools we will use? Project plan tools, Jira tool, and other tools also we will use to execute the activities. Okay, once we come to the code, there the activities, component selection, third-party component selection we will do, coding, implementation, unit test, pre-commit test, then commit to the GitLab repository or some other repository. Then what tools we will use? Development, IDE like Eclipse, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, Git tools, code scanning, plugins, JUnit. These tools we will use to execute the coding phase activity. Next, build phase. Their activities, CI/CD pipeline implementation and stages creation, code scan, build. These activities we will do in the build phase. There are tools we will use like Maven, Gradle. To make the build, we will use Maven or Gradle. Then Jenkins pipelines, example Jenkins. Other pipeline tools also we have. For sample purpose, I mentioned Jenkins tool. Once the code is builded, then we will deploy and we will make runtime. So there we will do the testing activities like functional test, performance test, regression test. So there have multiple types of test, right? We will execute the test. The tools we will use like Selenium, JMeter, Robot Framework, and other tools also we will use. Then release phase, software release, compliance check we will do. Mostly we will use the delivery repository like software release gateway or some other tools we will use, and we will release the packages or binaries, right? Then deploy infrastructure as a code, the manual deployment we will do, and here the tools majorly we will use like Docker, Chef, Ansible. These tools we will use. Once we go to the operate phase, their operations activities and the operations related tools, procedures we will follow. Once we go to the monitor, they're monitoring the system or application performance, log analysis, we will do the high level activities. And the tools aspect we will use majorly Splunk. The tools aspect we will use Splunk, Nagios. These tools we will use to execute the monitoring phase activities. So this is the overview about the DevOps. We can move to the DevSecOps activities and the tools details. We can move to the DevSecOps framework. Okay, here we can see the DevSecOps related security activities and what standards we need to follow and which tools we need to use. At a high level, activities, security standards, and a tools list have mentioned to incorporate each phase of the DevOps stages. So first, if we take the plan stage, their security activities we need to consider like security requirements, privacy requirements as per our GDPR, then architecture and design phase, secure architecture and design guidelines, threat model and risk assessment, security controls, privacy impact assessment and its controls. So these high level activities we need to consider as part of our plan stage. Again, suppose if you ask what standards we need to follow to execute these activities, we have the best practices and requirements from NIST, OWASP, SANS CWE Top 25, CVE. These requirements we need to consider and we need to execute these activities. On the tools aspect, suppose if you ask, again the tools we have threat model tools, Microsoft threat model tools, OWASP threat dragon tools to execute the threat model. And to execute the risk assessment, mostly we can use the customized Excel sheet and we can execute the risk assessment. Also the privacy impact assessment, we have tools like OneTrust tools and other tools also we have. We can use any of the tools and we can execute the assessment. Okay, once we come to the coding phase, here you can see the activities list like secure coding guidelines, secure coding, pre-commit checks, code commit. These activities we need to incorporate as part of our coding phase. And the standards we need to follow the OWASP secure coding, CSET, Mishra, and the tools we need to use like development IDE, Sonar plugins, Snyk plugins, other plugins also we can use and we can incorporate as part of our IDE. Okay, once we come to the build phase, there we have the security activities like static application security test, software composition analysis, software bill of materials generation, build creation, software signing. So these stages we can implement as part of our CICD pipeline and we can execute the activities. And standards, we can follow the DevOps best practices, DevSecOps best practices, and we can execute the activities. And the tools aspect, we can use the Sonar Cube, Snyk, Detect Secret, Dependency Tracker, software signing tools or code signing tools we can use, and we can execute the activities. Okay, once build is created and the build is deployed in the runtime, so there we can do different types of testing activities like dynamic application test, penetration test, fuzz test. Meantime, if required, the containerized image scan also we can do. So these activities we will do in the test stage. Again, the security standards, CIS benchmark, OWASP top 10, SANS CWE, CVE, these standards we can follow and we can execute the activities. And the tools like Snyk, KubeHunter, KubeBench, KubeAudit, Burpsuite, Nessus, Qualys, Synopsys, they have multiple types of tools here. We can use the tools and we can execute the activities. Then release and deploy phase, compliance check, secure configuration, hardening, dashboard integration for security monitoring. These activities we can incorporate. And the standards aspect like NIST, CIS, HIPAA, PCI DSS, P2I, GDPR, these requirements we need to consider. The tools, again here we have the tools like AWS Artifact or equivalent tools we can use and we can achieve the compliance checks. Okay, operate phase, again data handling, backup, restoration. So these aspects we need to execute the activities. And again, based on the GDPR tools, the data classification, data privacy tools we will use and we will execute the activity. Okay, monitoring phase. Here we have the vulnerability monitoring, patch upgradation, SOC monitoring, incident monitoring, penetration test, purple team activities. These activities we need to execute in the monitoring stage. Again, tools like Nessus, Qualys, SOC monitoring tools like FireEye, Splunk, SIEM tools, penetration testing tools. These tools we can use and we can execute the activities. So these activities, possible activities we can automate and we can incorporate as part of our CICD pipeline. This is what the DevSecOps approaches, best practices. The framework will provide the details. Okay, next slide we can see the sample application and we can discuss how to implement these activities as part of our CICD pipeline. That aspect we can discuss. Okay, here you can see the sample architecture for DevSecOps. Here you can see the development PC or laptop. It's nothing but the Git runner will run in the development PC. Once the developer create the code, they will push or pull the code to the GitLab repository or any other repository, so that here it will maintain the source code. Then the Jenkins, here I given the Jenkins pipeline. Here we can create the multiple types of pipeline jobs, right? Suppose if we create to scan the GitLab pipeline code using the Snyk or Detect Secret or Sonar Cube. So these tools we can use and we can implement the SAST stage and we can create the job for the CICD. Again, SCA, suppose if we want to analyze the software composition analysis, we can create one more stage in the pipeline, like dependency tracker tools we can use and we can implement, so that the tool will scan the repository and it will provide the third party dependency and its vulnerability details. Suppose if we want to create the bill of materials, software bill of materials SBOM, we can create one more stage in the pipeline, and we can implement the stage for SBOM. Okay, we can use Maven or Gradle tool. If all the stages are passed, then we can create the build and we can do the compliance check for the build process. Again, here the overall compliance, like here we can do the overall compliance checks and we can create the build. Once the build is created, if it is containerized image, we can use the tools like Trivy tools and we can implement the containerized image scan tools. Once the containerized image scan is deployed in the infrastructure, we can create the dashed stage in the pipeline itself so that we can execute the dashed also in the pipeline. So in addition that the testing pipeline, we have additional pipeline also based on our requirements we can consider. Example, we can integrate the Jira tools and we can monitor the requirements, security requirements we can monitor in the CICD pipeline. And we have the tool OS Threat Dragon. That tool we can integrate and we can monitor the threat modeling, risk status in the CI/CD pipeline, and AWS artifact like compliance checks we can do using the artifact of the AWS tool. And if it is containerized image, we can use the, if it is Kubernetes environment, we can implement these stages for Kubernetes related security tests like Kubunter, Kubench. These tools we can integrate and we can execute that. If required, OneTrust tool also, report also we can integrate in the CI/CD pipeline and we can monitor the privacy impact assessment and its risk. So overall dashboard also we can create in the pipeline itself so that if we have any security risk, we can monitor that how many number of risk we mitigated, how many number of risk are open, that status we can monitor in the CI/CD pipeline. So this is what the best practice in the DevSecOps. The end-to-end security activities we can automate and we can incorporate as part of our pipeline. This is what the DevSecOps framework best practices are defined. Okay, implementation. How we need to implement, how we need to approach. First, we need to identify the security activities to be followed for our product, identify required tools and implement the automation in the CI/CD pipeline stages, and conclude required security tools for your pipeline. So these basic steps we need to approach and we need to implement the DevSecOps framework. Implement the CI/CD pipeline POC initially. Once the POC is success, you can integrate these stages in your DevOps pipeline. This is what we need to approach here. Okay, best practices. Implement the end-to-end security activity stages in CI/CD pipeline. Again, end-to-end means here requirements monitoring, threat model, risk assessment, secure component selection, SAST, SCA, code signing, containerized image scan, DAST, penetration test, VA scan. These stages we can implement as part of our CI/CD and we can monitor the security related activities. Implement CI/CD pipeline stages for security compliance checks also. Implement CI/CD stage for dashboard monitoring like security, open risk, closed risk, residual risk. These status also we can monitor in the CI/CD pipeline itself. Implement quality controls for each security stage of the CI/CD. That quality controls also we can implement. This also one of the best practice in DevSecOps. Okay, benefit of the DevSecOps. Security vulnerabilities can identify in the earlier stage. Security checks can be validated in all the layers. Easy to achieve zero trust security model. shift left approach, more security test and verification coverage, product can achieve end-to-end security, product can easily other any regulatory compliance or security compliance. Also, this is a low cost solution since we are using most of the time open source tools. The solution also low cost when compared to the third party vendor security solution. Okay, I done this session. Suppose if you have any clarification on this DevSecOps framework, you can post your comments or clarifications in the comment section. Thank you.